Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraftman James Anning. We warmly welcome the family of Trooper Charles Pyrmont Wilkinson and Private Fredric Stephen Wilkinson, whose stories will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by a family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the stories behind two of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Trooper Charles Pyrmont Wilkinson and Private Fredric Stephen Wilkinson. Charles Wilkinson was born in 1895 to John and Clara Wilkinson of Dallamella, Victoria. The following year, his brother Fredric was born. When the two were boys, their father had a dairy farm. When Fred was 7 years old and Charles 8, their brothers and sisters caught diphtheria. Most recovered, but their oldest brother John died of the disease. The family later moved from the district, Fred moving to Kernet, where he worked as a farm labourer. On the outbreak of war in 1914, Charles was working as a farm labourer in Jumbunna, Victoria. He left to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force almost as soon as it was possible to do so, and was posted to the Light Horse. He left Australia in late February 1915 with the 8th Light Horse Regiment. The Light Horse were considered unsuitable for initial operations on Gallipoli, but casualties from the early days on the peninsula were threatening the Australian foothold at Anzac Cove. On the 15th of May, the 8th Light Horse Regiment embarked at Alexandria, leaving their horses behind in Heliopolis, headed for Gallipoli. By the end of the following week, the men were in the trenches near Quinn's Post. In the following days and weeks, Trooper Wilkinson's regiment rotated in and out of the front line, coming under attack from the Turks a number of times. At some point from the 23rd of June, Charles Wilkinson was caught in the blast from a Turkish artillery shell and was severely wounded. He died before he could be evacuated to a hospital ship and was buried at Ari Banu Point. He was 20 years old. The following year, in September 1916, Fredric enlisted in the AIF, signing up in Melbourne mid-month. He was posted to the 5th Battalion, and after a period of training in Australia, left for active service overseas about 6 weeks after enlisting. He first went to England, where he continued training on Salisbury Plain, and finally arrived in France to fight on the Western Front in March 1917. Shortly after reaching his battalion in the field, Private Wilkinson fell sick and was hospitalised twice over the coming months. On the 23rd of October 1917, the 5th Battalion entered the front line on the West Hoke Ridge in Belgium, and at some point, Private Wilkinson was wounded by a shell fragment that hit his left arm. He was evacuated to hospital in Bologna, eventually returning to his battalion in January 1918. A little over 5 months later, on the 4th of June 1918, the men of the 5th Battalion entered the front line, relieving the 9th Battalion near Armentières. The war diary noted that it had been a quiet day, and the relief was a success as they had suffered only 2 casualties. One of those casualties was Private Fredric Wilkinson. Little is known of the manner of his death. His body was removed from the battlefield and later interred at La Crule Military Cemetery near Hazebrook. Fred Wilkinson was 22 years old. Fredric and Charles' names are listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. These are but 2 of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. Their photographs are displayed today beside the pool of reflection. We now remember Trooper Charles Pyrmont Wilkinson and Private Fredric Stephen Wilkinson, who gave their lives for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow, not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.